everyone and welcome. My name is Kudzie Mapiye, and on this channel I do videos about my life living here in Zimbabwe, and I also share different life lessons that I've learned along the way. I've recently moved back to Zimbabwe from Australia after spending 17 years living in Australia, and in this video I'm going to be talking about why I chose to stay in rural Zimbabwe instead of the city. So yes, I live in a rural area in Zimbabwe. This house that we built is in a rural area, and it was such an intentional decision to choose to live in a rural area, and I'm just going to share some of those reasons in this video. And hopefully if you're someone who's looking to move back to Zimbabwe, this video might be helpful in helping you make the decision where you want to stay. So when we were planning to move to Zimbabwe, one of the big questions that I had is lifestyle. What is my lifestyle going to be like? Like, what is my everyday? What am I going to spend my days doing? And I considered, firstly, I didn't even consider rural life because I was born and raised in the city, and in Australia I used to live in a city. So I have no experience living in a rural area, so it was not even an option. So all our plans were focused on living in Harare, which is the capital city of Zimbabwe, which is where both my husband and I were raised. So we were very familiar with Harare, and every time we were thinking of places to live in Harare, we'll think of a place and then we'll ask ourselves, what are we going to be doing every day? And the answer to that question usually looked like things that we're already doing in Australia, like wake up, the life would be very similar. Wake up, watch TV, like very minimal interaction with your neighbors, living in a small space of land. So that's what it looked like, and I don't know, my heart just wasn't drawn to that. I wanted something different, and I had said to myself, if I'm going to move to Zimbabwe, if I'm going to leave Australia, it has to be for something different. I'm not going to leave for more of the same. So I'm not going to leave Australia and then come to Zimbabwe and live the same life I was living in Australia. So I really wanted a different lifestyle. And when we exhausted all the city areas, we're just like, you know what, I don't think we're going to have a good lifestyle in the city. We want something different, and I don't think we're going to find that difference in the city, which is when we started considering living in rural Zimbabwe. And from the moment we decided that, we were just sold on the idea straight away, because the lifestyle looked completely different. There would be more land available, so the kids can run around, and we won't be worried about noise, because that's something that I was always worried about even in Australia, the kids making a lot of noise and disturbing the neighbors. So I didn't want to have that stress. I wanted my kids to be free range kids, just running around, having a good old time, not worrying about disturbing the neighbors. And when we thought of rural life and the amount of land that is available in rural Zimbabwe, we thought, hey, I think this is the best option for us. And when we came to that critical question, what would the lifestyle be like? What would we spend our days doing? It was, there was just more to do, because if you're in a rural area, because you have more land, there's a lot of things to do. So we actually ended up settling on a farm, a family farm, and there's plenty of land. And the other benefit is that our family is right next door, right next door. Right now I'm looking at our neighbors, which are our family's house. So it's a walking distance. My kids can just run out the house and walk, to their granddad's house. And, my sister-in-law just lives down the road. So it's a really good lifestyle for us, because we have never experienced that before, living so close to family. And it has just been the best thing I've ever done in my life. Just knowing that I can be with my family every single day, and when I want my space, I'll just go back into my own house. And when I wanna, I can talk to them every day. I don't have to call them on the phone. My kids can hang out with their grandparents every single day and see their cousins. It was such a beautiful thing, and it has been such a beautiful thing ever since we moved here. And it's something that I would never have imagined in my wildest dreams, that I'll be able to live such a life where I'm close to family, because I was separated from my family for a very long time, like 17 years. Living overseas is a long time, and you don't have direct access to your family. With the time difference between Australia and Zimbabwe, it was always hard to catch the right time where, you know, your family is free and you're free and you can connect. It wasn't always that convenient. But this time, like my son and my daughter, they go and say good morning to their granddad every single day and good night. So it is such a beautiful thing, and we get to connect with our family. And in terms of like what we do every day, like farm life, like, you know, we've got chickens, there's just so much to do. There are animals, there's you know, just a typical farm life. There's nothing, like there's never a day where you're just like, oh, there's nothing to do. It's either you've got nothing to do because you don't want to do anything, but not because there's nothing to do around you. And then the second reason is also expense. It's a lot cheaper to live in rural Zimbabwe than it is to live in the city, particularly when it comes to things that you do. Because if you're in a rural area, like you can't just drive into the city, like just go buy a takeaway or just go to the shops and spend. And that is something that I really, really wanted to work on when I moved from Australia. I felt like over time I had just developed this spending habit, which wasn't healthy. Like I used to spend unnecessarily because it was so convenient. I lived near a big mall. I could just like literally drive for not very long and I'm at the mall and there's everything I want and I can just shop. And I ended up accumulating so much stuff that I didn't even need and spending so much money, and I didn't want to get into the same habit. So living in a rural area and being you know, far away from the city means that I don't get to like spend a lot of money like I was used to. And I'm noticing that I think I am a recovering spendaholic and I really love that for me and my bank accounts. I've never spent such little money in a week, like for as long as I can remember, like since I've come here living in a rural area, because you get your supplies from the city maybe once a week or twice a week, and then you're on the farm, like you don't need to go and buy stuff. We cook our own food. We don't eat out a lot, so that saves a whole lot of money, which means that our money can take us a long way. So that's another reason why we chose to live in a rural area. And then the other thing, and this was something that was so important to me, was the classism that exists in the city. I feel like when I was in Australia, and I've done videos about this on my channel, and I actually created a playlist about it, I think, about racism. Like, you know, when you're overseas, when you're in a country that you're not born in, or where, you know, that's not where you're from originally, you are most likely to experience racism at some point. And in Australia, there was, you know, times where I had experienced racism, and I spoke about it on this channel. If you're curious to know what kind of racism it was, how often it was, and the type of racism and stuff like that, you can go and watch those videos on this channel. But yeah, I knew that, you know, there was racism in Australia, but in Zimbabwe there is classism. And classism is where like this divide between the rich and the poor, and there is like rich people, the way rich people treat poor people and vice versa. Like there's a bit of a divide, you know, and it's very similar to racism, but it's just not like, it's just happening within the same race, where people are discriminating against each other because of their social class. And I find that a lot in the city. And an example of this is when I do go into the city, like when we go shopping or whatever, I find that, you know, people stare at you. And in Australia, people used to stare at me as well, but they're staring at me because my skin color is different, like I look different. But here, I feel like people are staring at me to kind of like assess my social class. And that is something that I find like in Zimbabwe a lot, where people just try and assess which social class you belong to. Like, by when they're meeting you, even in the shops, like people are just kind of like, you know, assessing each other. That thing is like ongoing. And I find even when you go to the more like upmarket neighborhoods, upmarket, you know, shopping precincts, it's even worse from my experience, that you feel that classism really strong, and you see people of a certain class hang around certain areas, and like there are areas for like richer people, and then there are areas for like poor people, and it's rare to find where the two are kind of mixing together. And when you do find areas where the two are mixing together, it's really easy to distinguish who's rich and who's poor by the way people are acting, and they don't kind of mix in that way. And that is something for me that I don't enjoy. I don't like that. I don't like that feel, like that divide between rich and poor and how they treat each other. I feel like, you know, we're all people of, you know, the same country, same race. Like we shouldn't have that kind of divide. But hey, it is what it is. So living in a rural area, I don't find that, you know, people having that big divide, like that classism where people are assessing each other a lot in the shops or in different neighborhoods. They're assessing each other, like, what are you driving, what are you wearing, are you rich, are you poor? In the rural area, like, people are just people majority of the time. Like, people greet you when you're walking past, and it's just this, it's more communal. And I really, really like that. Like, people are less focused on social class than they are in the bigger cities. And I find that that means there is less pressure to keep up with the Joneses. When you're living in a rural area, you can just be free and be yourself and not have that social pressure to be a certain way, look a certain way, you know, go to certain areas, hang out in certain places with certain people. I don't feel that pressure on myself because I live in a rural area. When I go into the city, I'm like a little tourist from the village. Like, I just come here to do what I need to do and I leave. And I don't really care much what I look like, or where I'm hanging out, because I know that's not where I live. Like, I live like in a very different setting. So it's been so refreshing for my mind, for my mental health, not having those different pressures that big cities usually have. It's whether it's racism, classism, whatever it is. I don't have those kind of pressures. I can just be myself. And, you know, even like in the bigger cities, I feel like you're closer to your neighbors that you're not related to, and there could be that pressure of like what's going on there and trying to fit in and trying to, you know, have your place in society. But in the village, I don't feel that way. It's very communal. People just want to get together and people support each other. And it's just been a really good lifestyle for me. And for someone who hasn't, you know, who hasn't lived in a rural area before, I was very surprised at how much I enjoy living in a rural area, and how much peace I have and how much fresh air I have. Because the other thing is, I find that when I go into the city, because it's quite congested, like with people, with cars, with a lot of things, there is a lot of pollution. And it's not as clean as in the rural areas, because there's a lot of people, it's denser, there are a lot of people in a smaller space, like being a big city. So I find that it does tend to be a bit polluted in the air, like the air doesn't seem as fresh, and it doesn't even seem like, in the city, it just seems even dustier and smokier because of the cars and people walking and all that. But in the village, like, because you've got a large space of land to yourself, the air seems fresher. Like, when I compare my experience when I go into the city and when I'm at home in the village, like, the air seems fresher. There's a lot more space. Like, we have a whole lot of vegetation on the farm. Like, we've got a lot of trees, so it's very green, and, you know, we've got a lot of fresh air, and you can look into the distance and just see nothing, like no other houses or anything. So it's really peaceful, and it's a really good space to meditate. Like, if you want to think about something really deep, if you want to plan ahead, there's not a lot of distractions. I feel like, you know, you can just be yourself, and just like, you can walk around, you can think, you can stare into the distance and do all those kind of things in the village. So that's another like reason why, you know, we live in the village. We love the lifestyle, we love the low cost lifestyle, and just the location, having a lot of space, being close to family. Like all our neighbors are our family, and I've never had that. Even when I was living in Zimbabwe before I moved to Australia, I've never lived close to my family. I always lived with other people, like strangers, as neighbors. But now it's like a very different experience, and my kids have been loving it. Like right now, as I'm filming in the house, my kids are right next door at their granddad's house. So, you know, that's the beauty of it. Like there's always someone to watch the kids, like someone that you know, someone that you trust, and your kids can just walk over. Like it's just a very, very different lifestyle that I'm really, really enjoying. So if you're someone who's, you know, toying with the idea of moving back home, really consider rural living. Like it's just so blissful. I cannot even like adequately describe in words how good it is, but it's been so good, so refreshing. I feel like I really recharged my batteries, because living in a city, like I felt like it was so fast, go go go, but in the village you're so laid back, like no pressure, you don't need to go anywhere, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really, really enjoying my life in the village, and I feel like I've become like the village princess. I just love like village life. I never would have thought I was such a city girl like before, but now I cannot see myself like, you know, loving the city more than I love the village. I think even if I move into the city in the future, not even thinking about it, but if I do, like, I don't think I will enjoy city life as much as I enjoy rural life. And there are some benefits of city life, such as conveniences and all that. Like, I do know that, but I think for the benefits that I'm getting from rural life, and the fact that I can always access a city and get those services, I don't feel like I'm missing out. I feel like I'm getting the best of both worlds. I can live in my laid back rural life and go to the city when I want to and save my coins. So yeah, it's been really, really good. So yeah, that's kind of like the reasons why we chose rural life and how it's going, how I'm finding rural life. It's just really, really good. And then like I've even like I love art. If you know me, I'm a lover of art, and I've got African art all over my house that just like soaks in that whole rural life. Like you can even see the background behind me. Like this piece of art is just describes the communal feel of village life, which I love, and I wanted to have a piece of that in my house as a reminder. So yeah, that's it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in the next one.